Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Good Sunday, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. It's the 22nd of February. As always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your latest weather information for your Alaska community and village. You can do that by listening to Marine VHF, NOAA Weather Radio, going online to weather.gov/Alaska or arh.noaa.gov. The weather info line is open at 800-472-0391. And if you've been following along on Facebook today, in between whatever else is going on at home, you can find out some of the information we've been talking about in the office. Some of that has been the record rainfall, even in the interior, the record warmth spreading through South Central, and what that means in your community. It could mean a lot of stuff, but certainly it means a lot of impacts across South Central and the interior, from airport closures to just being awfully slick across area roads and walkways there. So be extra careful no matter what part of Alaska you're in today and what kind of weather you're experiencing. On Twitter, on Facebook, and on YouTube, you'll find information all during the day. Let's get started with what's going on up north. First, blizzard watch in effect now for the eastern Beaufort Seacoast. That'll go from Monday morning until at least Monday afternoon or so. We're concerned about the possibility for easterly winds about 25 to 35 miles per hour, gusting up to 50 there for the eastern Beaufort Seacoast. You have not been a stranger to that type of weather this winter at all. Looking for near zero visibility during that time period there. The winds will start to pick up pretty quickly, it looks like Monday morning there. For the western Arctic coast, a winter weather advisory there, generally for blowing snow. Easterlies 20 to 30, gusting up to 40 there. Visibility could be down to about a half mile. And then freezing rain advisory until about 9 o'clock there for the lower Yukon Valley, expecting probably about 1/10 of an inch or less of additional ice on top of surfaces there. That'll go until about 9 o'clock before conditions improve, but a freezing rain advisory in effect there. Well, some of the freezing rain across the lower Yukon is not uncommon, but it's all part of a bigger weather system that's been bringing up a lot of warmth across South Central and even into the interior. In Fairbanks, about 1/4 inch of rainfall across a large part of the middle Tanana Valley. It's the greatest 24-hour precipitation total, a liquid precipitation total there in February since 1923. Think about that for a second. In a place where it's usually snow, where they shut down one of the sensors there and don't actually take precipitation measurements because it's usually snow, 1/4 inch of rainfall there around Fairbanks. That's a mess, and the airport has suffered in operations as a result of that, of course, in the last 24 hours. In Anchorage, 4/10 of an inch of rainfall yesterday, February 21. That's the most precipitation on that date since 1968. And today, 47 degrees, the record high temperature set for the 22nd of February. So certainly a warm day yesterday and again today. And Homer yesterday set the all-time monthly high temperature for February on February 21. So yesterday's high temperature, the warmest it's ever been on the record book since the 1930s or so in Homer. So just put that all together there. It's not just one place and one record. It's a lot of different parts that are all very warm, all the way from South Central and into the interior, and probably even in some parts of your communities and your region there. So these are just some of the ones that we picked out of the bucket today. Here's a look out across southwestern Alaska, and you can see the weather pattern right now. The overall flow is still from south to north up the west coast. We've got a circulation passing through the Bering Strait there. The ice has receded across Bristol Bay, if you've been tracking that for the last week or so. A lot of changes there across Bristol Bay, and several other circulations of warmer weather starting to build in across the western Pacific, and they'll work their way up the Kamchatka Peninsula. So the weather pattern has totally changed from about 1.5 weeks to 2 weeks ago, when all this was very blocked in across the Bering Strait, and cold was flowing off the continent. That has reversed, and now we're moving from south to north and bringing warm air further and further northward up the western coast. Across the greater parts of Alaska, you can see low pressure still working its way up in a pretty constant stream right across the Gulf of Alaska. That moisture spreading across south central, Prince William Sound, the Susitna, and into the Tanana Valley there. And a lot of that, again, ringing out rainfall over Fairbanks just last night and this morning, making very dangerous travel conditions across the middle Tanana Valley. As those of you know, anywhere up and down the Chena River or from North Pole to Fairbanks, trying to get in or out of town, it sounds like it's been next to impossible, or at least very, very tricky at times today, trying to get around the Fairbanks region at all. Further northward, plenty of clouds, not a whole lot of precipitation so far, but again, it's going to be the winds across the Beaufort Seacoast that are probably making things a little bit more tricky. And the same goes for the Chukchi Seacoast. Watch for poor visibility there with the winds picking up as we head through the rest of tonight, and then watching for blizzard potential there for the eastern Beaufort Seacoast as we head into tomorrow morning and probably lasting into the afternoon there. Again, the winds will start to pick up as we go through the day tomorrow. Here's the weather pattern right now, a 985 millibar low south and west of St. Lawrence Island. This is tracking north and east. We've got rainfall across the Kotzebue Sound coastline around Kivalina and northward, some light snow around the western Arctic coastline, and some light snow also around the eastern Beaufort Seacoast. The warm air is indicated by this frontal boundary we draw here, the red line indicating the movement of air is moving north and west, so warm air surging much further north than the Bering Strait. Several waves of colder air are setting up across the central and western Bering Sea, though, and each one of these is gradually going to start cutting back on that flow of warm air coming in from the south. So there are some changes back toward a colder regime as we go through the week and the next week to follow. In the meantime, warm air is winning across the Gulf Coast. We have rain, kind of moderate to maybe even heavy there around Yakutat and northern sections of southeast. Some areas of rain showers across the northern Susitna Valley, including places around Talkeetna. We have some light snow falling across some parts of the interior and areas of fog also around those regions, including the Fairbanks area at times today. Low pressure will continue to sit across the Gulf with rainfall across northern southeast all the way through Prince William Sound, south central, and Kodiak Island tonight. Periods of rain and snow, probably some freezing rain, though relatively light around the Copper River Basin, so plan on some travel troubles there. That was tricky in the last couple days there as well, including last night. Pockets of light snow across the interior as well as the south-facing slopes of the Brooks Range, and then watch for some snow showers and blowing snow across the northern coast. To the west, pockets of rain and snow for the Seward Peninsula, and southwest, it looks like mainly rain for you, but a look out west shows colder air is moving in your general direction, and as it does so time and time again, wave after wave as we head into the early part of the week, conditions will gradually cool, so it'll be more likely toward the midweek that you'll have a better chance of seeing snow showers rather than the warmer rain showers that you're dealing with now. So conditions will turn cooler. For south central, periods of rain and snow are still possible on Monday. Look for a better chance of snow showers across the upper Yukon and the North Slope. And across the west, periods of snow showers still active across the Bering Strait with pockets of rainfall across the central and southern parts of southeast, including Ketchikan, Craig, and Klawock. As we get into Tuesday, high pressure tries to set up across southeast. There will still be some rain showers lingering around the region, but it looks like fewer areas will see that widespread rainfall that we're dealing with probably the next couple days. So by Tuesday, some improvement noted there. Clouds will still be hanging over south central and southwestern Alaska with a storm system out across the Gulf of Alaska. Snow showers around the Alcan and some continued scattered of snow showers across Kotzebue Sound, Seward Peninsula, and Norton Sound for that matter. But you'll notice high pressure sitting just south of the Aleutians at this point. With that puts the focus for south and westerly flow coming in across the western chain. Winds are going to pick up out there as we head into Monday night and Tuesday. And this moisture will be spreading up over some of the colder air across the western Bering. And this will be tracking to the north and east. So we're going to see some more impacts a little bit further out to the west of where we have been looking at most of this weather. And those storms will start to take the reins as far as the kind of regular weather pattern goes. So that's the weather plan as we see it right now into Tuesday. As far as temperatures go today, another mild day across the southern parts of southeast, Ketchikan, Craig, and Klawock, as well as Hyder, all fairly mild today, mid-40s to upper 50s, or near 50, I should say. Around Juneau, lower 40s today. Looked like Sitka was 46, Yakutat around 44. Prince William Sound saw temps in the 30s and 40s. Valdez, one of the cooler spots, as it seems to be all the time. 43 around Seward, 48 around Homer. Not quite as warm today as it was yesterday. 41 in Kenai, and temperatures made it into the upper 40s around Anchorage by 4 o'clock, cooling back down to 44, 37 in Squentina, 42 in Talkeetna, 30s and 40s around the interior, with Healy pretty warm at 48. Fairbanks up to 32 by 4 o'clock, 37 in Eagle, 19 in Fort Yukon. Temps up in Arctic Village only 12, 27 in Anaktuvuk Pass. The Arctic coast anywhere from the single digits to a couple degrees either side of zero. 1 in Barrow, 1 below in Kaktovik, 12 around Wainwright. Kotzebue Sound temperatures in the 30s and 40s. Nome was 34 today. And around Unalakleet it was 38 degrees, 40 in McGrath, low 40s for Grayling, all the way down into Sparrowvon, 40 in Bethel today. Nunivak Island showed 34. Gamble was 37 on St. Lawrence Island. Southwest, we saw temps in the 30s and 40s there. King Salmon up to 46. Lake Iliamna in the lower 40s today. Same goes for Kodiak Island. The Pribilofs at or just below that freezing point by late afternoon. 30s and 40s for the Alaska Peninsula. Sandpoint hovering at 39. About the same there for Unalaska and Dutch Harbor. And the central and western chain also in the lower to mid 30s today. Overnight low temps stay in the 20s and 30s for the interior, the Arctic coast, at or just below zero. Kotzebue Sound temps in the 20s and 30s, Nome 26, southwest coast in the upper 20s to lower 30s. Some places hover above freezing for a while. Same goes for the Alaska Peninsula. St. Paul at 26, the chain in the upper 30s, southeast upper 30s to mid 40s, Sitka at 45, and south central very close to freezing for most of the night, if not just a skosh above. High temps tomorrow in south central, back to about 40 or so. It's going to be another mild day. 30s and 40s for the peninsula, closer to freezing around Bethel and points northward into Norton Sound, a little bit near 30 degrees. 29 in Nome, 3 in Barrow, looking like low 30s there for Fairbanks and the middle Tanana Valley, and southeast looking at temperatures in the mid to upper 40s. Flying weather now, a wide area of IFR across the south-facing slopes of the Brooks Range. You'll see VFR on the northern side and MVFR for the Arctic coast itself. IFR conditions extend from the Arctic Ocean all the way through the Bering Strait and into Norton Sound and around St. Lawrence Island. Some breaks in the MVFR as you get out to the west, and a pretty decent chunk of MVFR conditions extend over south central, the Matanuska and Susitna valleys, the Copper River Basin, and into southeastern Alaska. Here's your pass conditions, and we see Anaktuvuk and Adigan Pass both at IFR as we head into your Monday in the beginning of the work week. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass will list as IFR for tomorrow, transitioning toward MVFR conditions, heading for rainy and windy pass probably at IFR through most of the day. Same goes for Isabel Pass on your Monday. Mentasta Pass, we expect to see marginal flight restrictions as we go through visibility there, and Tanita Pass, probably some improvements for your Monday afternoon. Portage Pass will start at IFR and hope for a little bit of lifting in that ceiling and improved visibility during the day. Could be kind of hit and miss there. And Chilkoot and White Pass, we expect to see IFR conditions worsening as we get into the afternoon. Freezing levels, well, as you would see on the surface weather map there a little while ago, no doubt the surface freezing line is punching well north of Nome and into the Bering Strait. And the warm air overrunning that is mainly over the eastern part of the Gulf, trying to work its way into south central. But we do have some pockets of warm air across the northwestern slope as well. So watch for that. Those levels as high as 2,000 feet right now. And for southern parts of southeast past the Dixon entrance, those levels are as high as 8,000 to 10,000 feet. Icing potential is really focused up north right now, above 5,000 feet for most areas. They're occasional to maybe widespread moderate. Otherwise, it's light to isolated moderate, hit and miss from St. Matthew all the way down to the Pribilofs and the southern parts of southeast, generally above 8,000 feet. Anything else should be pretty isolated below what we've got listed there. Tomorrow's jet stream shows the ridge of high pressure still holding across the Pacific Northwest and just offshore. The main driver right now is low pressure across eastern Asia, and that's pulling in that warm air from the Bering Strait and pushing that northward. And then the Pacific storm track as well south of Alaska, that's running around 100 to about 150 knots or so. But we still have that predominant south and westerly flow working its way over the Bristol Bay region and North Pacific. At 9,000 feet, you can see similar conditions there. A south and west flow coming into southwest Alaska, a ridge of high pressure to our south and east, and that's all just putting the entire state in that warmer south and west flow, really holding back any northerly effects at all. So at this point, it's all southerlies, 25 to 40 knots or so across the west coast. For the interior, 5 to 10 knots, pretty light there, and across the Gulf, about 20 to 30 knots or so across the northern Gulf Coast. At 3,000 feet, a south and west flow continues here at this level, a little bit stronger out over the open waters of the Gulf at 45 knots. South and west flow across the YK Delta, 30 to 35 knots there. Across the interior, it slows down to about 10 knots, and southerlies across the north slope around 25 knots or so. For the chain, it's a little bit more of a westerly flow at this level, a west and northwest flow coming in across Adak and Atka between 25 and about 35 knots or so. Turbulence potential then, we're watching areas around St. Lawrence Island and westward, generally below 4,000 feet. That could reach occasional moderate. Below 6,000 feet around the western Brooks Range, especially on the south-facing slopes there, and southward into the Kuskokwim, lower Kuskokwim Valley, maybe the Yukon Delta, also below 6,000 feet. The northern sections of southeast should watch out for turbulence that could reach upwards of occasional moderate there. That too will be around 6,000 feet and below. And elsewhere, we're not really seeing too many turbulence issues at this point, but watch out to the west for more active weather. That's a look at your aviation forecast and more. We'll be back with your marine weather and an update of the sea ice edge here in just a few minutes. Stay tuned. Thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, and joining us today is Eric Stevens from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Thank you for joining us, Eric.
My pleasure, Dave.
Thank you. And you're joining us here to talk a little bit more about satellites and how satellites work, and especially one neat feature that's working over Alaska right now. What is that?
Well, there's a lot of weather satellites and a lot of instruments on these satellites, and there are new generations going up and new instruments. This includes something called the Day-Night Band, which is not a cover band at the local bar, but it's a new satellite that is very useful, especially here in Alaska, especially in the winter.
In the wintertime, yeah, that makes it a little bit hard to use some of the normal tools that we associate with weather satellite imagery.
Right. You know, one of the classic weather satellite instruments is just visible light. What would the human eye see? If you were riding on a weather satellite yourself and looked down, and it was black and white, you'd see the clouds reflecting the sunlight. And we've got an example from the Pacific Ocean. There's a geostationary satellite, and we can see that the eastern side of the image is in daylight. The western side, it's night over there, so you don't see anything because there's no sunlight over there. And visible imagery, it's very intuitive. You see the clouds just like you see them standing on the ground, but now you're a satellite seeing them from above. But the problem is, what about the night side of the planet? How do you track the storms? How do you know where the rain is, the snow, the weather, if you can't see the clouds? And that's why, just like a television can change from one channel to another, or a radio can change stations, satellites can change the frequency of the electromagnetic spectrum that they're looking at. We can go to infrared instead of visible light. You know, it's heat energy. You can see heat, and we've got another satellite picture from the same time, same satellite, out over the Pacific Ocean. That's the infrared side, and we're seeing temperature there. And even at night, when there's no light, everything still has a temperature.
So we're sensing something with a thermometer instead of perhaps the visible side of that, is what you're saying?
That's right. On this depiction, colder features are lighter shades, warmer features are dark. And so clouds tend to be colder than the ground. Clouds are higher in the atmosphere, it's cooler. And so that very same image on the western or the left-hand side of the globe, now we can see the clouds there, even though it's nighttime, because we're seeing the temperatures. And one nice feature is that tropical storm there, just in the middle of the northern hemisphere there, hurricane or typhoon, depending on...
That's that swirly part that we see in the middle of the image?
There you go. You can even see the eye on it there, especially in the infrared image. So we've got two kinds of imagery there from the same satellite, different instruments, you know, different channels like on a television, visible and infrared. You know, it turns out there's no one magic tool. Each has its strengths, each has its flaws, weaknesses. The visible is nice, it's intuitive, it's easy to understand, but doesn't work at night. Infrared is nice, it works at night, you can see temperatures, but there is a catch. What if your clouds and the nearby bare ground or open water, what if those were about the same temperature?
Oh, that's going to be hard to figure out what's going on.
If you can only see temperature and you have two features that are the same temperature, they will look the same. You won't be able to tell. They're camouflaged. This happens, especially, it can happen around Alaska, especially over the ocean when you have low clouds that are the same temperature as the open water.
That happens quite a bit in Alaska.
We have an example. Now, this is from a different geostationary satellite. It's down over the Atlantic Ocean. Look in the South Atlantic. In infrared, we've highlighted in a yellow circle there. There's some patches of clouds, but it looks like there's a clear area in the middle of that image. That's the infrared look. But let's take a look at the the visible channel, and we can see there's a stripe of clouds across the middle of that circle that is only visible in the visible.
Okay, right.
The trick here is that those are low clouds of about the same temperature as the surrounding ocean. So from an infrared point of view, where you're seeing temperature, the clouds in the water nearby are the same temperature, they look the same. It's only on the visible that you can see what stands out as the actual imagery.
Okay.
Two tools, each have their strengths and weaknesses. Can we combine them? That's where the day-night band comes in.
Okay.
It's a super sensitive visible sensor that can actually see by moonlight. It can even see the aurora.
Wow.
And in Alaska, we have long winter nights. We can use that day-night band. Here's an example from that storm that blew the Kullik drilling platform ashore near Kodiak Island in December back in 2012. This image is right near when that storm happened, and it's in the middle of the night in December.
But this looks like visible imagery.
Looks like daytime imagery. It's amazing. That sensor can take any little bit of moonlight and just make the most of it. We can see so much detail. Even in the northern part of the image there, you can see some aurora up there. The northern lights
That's that band that goes across the Arctic slope?
You got it. That's the northern lights. We're seeing black and white image here, so you don't get the green or the purple colors there. But that is the aurora. There's another example of the day-night band, and this is from January of 2013. It's about 4 in the morning, and this is a snapshot from Weather Service software. And we can even see in the middle of the image, there's the lights of Fairbanks and North Pole over to Eielson Air Force Base. Anchorage and Matsu lights, city lights, are evident as well. Sure, we can see, even though it's 4 in the morning in January, there is no sunlight to be had, that just enough moonlight is available that this sensor can see that. So we're trying to solve that puzzle where visible light is good, but only during the daytime. IR is good at night, but you can't see the difference between clouds and ground sometime. The day-night band is an attempt to do the best of both with one tool. And it's brand new for Alaska here, and we're hoping to use it in the forecast process and help predict storms, weather patterns, to help get good forecasts for people.
Okay, another tool in the weather toolkit for meteorologists in Alaska and researchers worldwide. Thank you so much, Eric, for joining us today. And you can learn more about GINA and the day-night band by going to the web address that you see on your screen. For Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider. I think we're going to see more of Eric this week too, so make sure you check back in later throughout the week. Here's the sea ice edge. You'll notice if you're watching this late last week that there was still ice here across the southwest Bristol Bay and a little bit closer to the Pribilofs. Well, with this warm flow, it has retreated northward. Same goes for Cook Inlet. It's still around Callaghan Island, but moving northward there. As long as we have this warm flow going across southwest and south central Alaska, watch for continued changes there. One note too, just off the northwest coast, out of our picture here, there might be some indications of some water that could be opening up out there. So if you're anywhere around the coast in the northwest, keep an eye open for that. That should be relatively close to Wainwright there. We'll continue to provide updates as we have more information throughout the week there. You can always find out information as it happens from our Sea Ice Desk team by going to weather.gov/anchorage/ice.php. Now across southeastern Alaska, a southerly flow continues to be around 15 to 30 knots in the inner coastline there. 3, 4, 5, even 6 foot seas the further north you go toward the Lynn Canal. An onshore flow from Yakutat down into Cross Sound, 20 to 25 knots. And southerlies taking shape south of Sitka to the Dixon entrance, 8 to 9 foot seas there on a 20-knot wind. That becomes northwesterly with time as we get into Tuesday. Winds go pretty light around the Lynn Canal and into Stevens Passage there, light northwesterlies in Clarence Strait. Otherwise, it's a very weak onshore flow, 10 to 15 knots there, becoming a little more northwesterly south of Sitka with 6 foot seas there as you head down toward Dixon entrance. Now across south central, a southwesterly flow continues to provide that warm air over the ice across the northern Cook Inlet, so seas are opening up there a little bit more. 3 foot seas in the north, 4 to 5 foot seas there west of the Barrens into Shelikof Strait. Light winds across Prince William Sound from the south, and then a southwesterly flow for the western Gulf between 20 and 25 knots, seas ranging from 7 to 8 feet in most areas. As you get into Tuesday, you'll notice a northeasterly flow across the Alaska Peninsula, about 15 knots with a 2 foot sea, and northeasterlies coming down from Kodiak Island, and apparently we've skipped Monday there, so watch for more shenanigans here momentarily. This ought to be good. 12 foot seas there south of Sandpoint and King Cove, and let's just see where this takes us. Aha, Monday, because Monday's next. Southwesterlies into Bristol Bay and north of Cold Bay, 5 foot seas there across the Bering Sea coast, 15 to 20 knots there south and west of Kodiak. 7 to 8 foot seas are expected across the Pacific side. Wait for it. 2 Mondays. How interesting. We're going to scrub this one. This one's got to be the old one, so never mind all this. You already got that. Now, across the central and eastern chain, south and westerly winds north of Adak to Unalaska, 15 to 25 knots. Light variable winds there south of Unalaska to Nikolsky with a 5-foot sea, and then westerlies from Kiska to Attu with a 9-foot sea on 25-knot winds. By Tuesday, winds are going to come up. Remember, we were watching that storm come up out of the North Pacific and then across the western Bering Sea. That's what's driving those southerly winds there, coming up to high gales at 45 knots with an 18-foot sea. Light northerlies cutting across Nikolsky to Atka, 15 knots with 5-foot seas. A little bit higher seas there from Nikolsky to Unalaska on the Pacific side, looking for 25 knots with an 8-foot sea on Tuesday. Glad to see the west coast is where it ought to be with a southwesterly flow with this over St. Lawrence Island at 25 knots. We'll see 5-foot seas outside of Kuskokwim Bay. Again, the ice edge has eroded northward there. Southwesterlies over the Pribilofs with a 9-foot sea. Southerlies over St. Matthew diminish as we get into Tuesday with a 30-knot wind. Southwesterlies over Nunivak Island and also holding around 20 knots or so coming across St. Lawrence Island, but still from the south. That means that warmer air is still traveling northward. And across the Arctic coast, stronger easterly winds developing around the Beaufort Seacoast as we go through the daytime tomorrow. Remember, blizzard watches are in effect for the coastline itself around Kaktovik. That'll start up tomorrow morning and last until the afternoon. So we'll see if those blizzard conditions look a little more serious in time, so watch for updates there from the Fairbanks National Weather Service office. Southerly flow across Kotzebue Sound and southeasterlies coming off of Cape Lisburne and Point Hope. Those diminish a little bit more as we get into Tuesday. South and westerly winds north of Barrow to Wainwright, 15 to 20 knots, and the winds diminish also from the central to eastern Beaufort Seacoast down to 15 to 25 knots by Tuesday afternoon, so improvements there. For the rest of tonight, across southeast and south central, it's mainly rain. In some cases, you might see a little bit of a rain and snow mix across south central, but as you get into the Copper River Basin, there's room for some light freezing rain there. Across the south-facing slopes of the Brooks Range and the upper Yukon Valley, light snow is possible, but you may see rain and snow mix as far north as the Tanana Valley and points south. And across the west coast, rain and snow may mix there as far north as Nome and Norton Sound. Some of that could also be light freezing rain. A better chance for increasing areas of snow showers across the Bering. These waves of cold will be moving from west to east throughout the rest of the week. And snow and blowing snow is a problem for the Arctic coast as we head into tomorrow. And again, blizzard watches posted there. Winter weather advisories for the Chukchi Seacoast and the northwest Arctic coast tonight, and freezing rain advisories in the interior.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.